Today is Thursday, September 18th. We'll tell you why late-night host Jimmy Kimmel has been pulled off the air indefinitely and why it's causing such backlash. Also, a new turning point for the Federal Reserve. We'll tell you about the latest interest rate cut and what the Fed says about the economy as a whole. Plus, how the U.S. is changing the citizenship test, what the data says about the state of marriage in the U.S., and which toys could soon be recognized as Hall of Famers. Those stories and even more news to know next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Jimmy Kimmel Live is now off the air for the foreseeable future, and it's causing an uproar. ABC did not actually explain its decision, but it came the same day the FCC warned the network over comments Kimmel made in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, saying broadcasters needed to pull the show or face the possibility of losing their licenses or having to pay fines. To be clear, Kimmel called Kirk's murder senseless and said he could not understand why people would cheer for it. But he also criticized Republicans, accusing them of trying to score political points from the killing. Kimmel also joked that conservatives are trying to characterize the shooter as, quote, anything other than one of them. But Trump's allies, including the head of the FCC, pointed out how the suspect does not appear to be pro-Trump. So they accuse Kimmel of spreading false information and assigning blame without the evidence to back it up. Well, now Kimmel is suspended indefinitely. The official White House Rapid Response account on X celebrated ABC's decision, saying, quote, they're doing their viewers a favor. Jimmy is a sick freak. But a lot of social media posts are also criticizing ABC's decision as an attack on America's First Amendment right of free speech. Kimmel has gotten support from the Screen Actors Guild, the Writers Guild, the ACLU, and several other celebrities. Of course, this comes after Stephen Colbert's show was also canceled. Paramount cited a downturn in advertising, but there are suspicions that choice was also about politics and the broadcaster wanting to cater to a more conservative base. President Trump has said he hoped to play a major part in the downfall of Colbert and Kimmel, and now he's also calling for NBC to fire Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers. The Federal Reserve has finally decided to cut interest rates. The Fed cut its benchmark lending rate by a quarter point to a new range of 4 to 4.25%. It comes after 9 months of no changes from the central bank as it waited to see how President Trump's policy shifts would impact the economy. Well, now Fed Chair Jerome Powell says even at this meeting, it wasn't obvious what to do since the economy's future is still up in the air. But central bankers decided worries about a slowing labor market now outweigh worries about inflation. And they made what Powell called a risk management cut in an effort to preemptively protect the economy rather than wait for a bigger downturn. The decision was almost unanimous. The only Fed governor who disagreed was one of President Trump's top economic advisors who got the job at the Fed right before the latest meeting started. He wanted a larger half-point rate cut. For now, Fed officials are planning at least one other rate cut later in the year. It meets again in October and December. The former head of the CDC testified on Capitol Hill. Susan Monterez told senators that Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. pressured her to change the childhood vaccine schedule and that he told her to fire CDC vaccine policy officials. But she says she would not compromise her scientific integrity and would not fire experts without cause. In response, the health department under RFK Jr. said the testimony had factual inaccuracies and that Monterez was just trying to undermine the president's agenda. Senators also heard from the CDC's former chief medical officer, who resigned shortly after Monterez was fired. Deborah Howry accused Kennedy of censoring science and politicizing the agency, and she says she worries the nation won't be prepared for the next outbreak. Next up, all eyes are on the CDC's vaccine advisory panel that now has new members RFK Jr. picked earlier this year. They meet today and tomorrow. One of the most prominent activists who protested against Israel is now on track to be deported. We're talking about Mahmoud Khalil, who has become a symbol of the Trump administration's crackdown on college campus protests. He was born and raised in a Palestinian refugee camp in Syria, but went to college at Columbia University here in the U.S. and became a lawful U.S. permanent resident last year. Then this week, an immigration judge ordered Khalil be deported to either Syria or Algeria. That judge said he omitted certain information on his green card application, like that he worked for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency of Palestine Refugees. So she put his deportation in motion. Well, now Khalil accuses the Trump administration of being behind the decision as a way of retaliating against him for speaking freely about the war in Gaza. And his lawyers say they're going to appeal. So far, no response from the Trump administration. The test applicants take to become American citizens is getting even longer. The U.S. government has added some new questions. Now people need to study 128 of them, all about U.S. history and politics. And during the oral test, they'll be asked 20 of those questions at random. In the past, citizenship applicants had to study from 100 questions and were asked 10. The questions are not multiple choice, but most do have more than one acceptable answer. The new test will apply to those who file citizenship applications anytime after the middle of next month. If you want to check out the list of questions yourself to see if you would pass, we've added a link in today's episode notes. We have more news for you still coming up, but first a quick break to thank our sponsor. As I get older, I think more about my long-term health and how to keep my body feeling its best. I've tried fish oil before, but I never loved the flavor or the aftertaste, and that's why I'm glad I found Fatty 15. Fatty 15 is built around C15, the first essential fatty acid discovered in more than 90 years. Based on over 100 studies, it helps strengthen cells and slow biological aging at the cellular level. When our cells age, our whole body ages, and Fatty 15 works to keep them stronger for longer. The story behind it is fascinating, too. The co-founder discovered the benefits of C15 while working with the U.S. Navy to improve the health of aging dolphins. Now, this breakthrough is helping people, too. What I like most is how easy it is. One small, vegan-friendly capsule a day, no fillers, no flavors, no aftertaste. And knowing it's been clinically proven to improve markers like liver and heart health, sleep, and even joint function gives me peace of mind. Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help you live healthier, longer. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/newsworthy and using our code newsworthy at checkout. Now back to the news. President Trump is getting the royal treatment in the UK. In fact, he got the largest military ceremonial welcome for a state visit in living memory. He viewed historical items from the royal collection and visited the final resting place of Queen Elizabeth. Then it was the lavish state dinner at Windsor Castle. Today, President Trump is set to meet with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Starmer is now hoping to talk geopolitical issues, trade, and technology. Companies like Microsoft, Nvidia, Google, and OpenAI have already pledged tens of billions of dollars in British investments over the next few years. But not everyone in the UK is happy about the state visit. Several thousand people marched through central London in protest yesterday, and some protesters projected an image of President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein on a tower at Windsor Castle. For that, 4 people were arrested. Saudi Arabia and Pakistan's ties are growing stronger. The two countries signed a formal mutual defense pact yesterday, and that means any attack on either nation will be viewed as an attack on both. Of course, this comes in the wake of Israel's strike on Qatar earlier this month that has made a lot of Gulf Arab states uneasy. And this pact is significant since Pakistan is one of the few countries with nuclear capabilities. But Saudi officials say this agreement has actually been in the works for years and is not a response to any specific event. As of this morning, no response from Israel or the U.S. As promised, President Trump is taking action against prominent far-left groups. This morning, he said he plans to designate Antifa as a major terrorist organization. And that designation matters because it lets the Justice Department prosecute people who support a terror group, even if that support does not result in violence. For now, the list of terror organizations includes extremist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but there aren't any American organizations on it. And in the past, it's been unclear if the legal mechanism even exists to add a domestic group. Remember, Antifa is short for anti-fascist, and it's controversial because many members believe violence is justified for their cause, thinking as long as racist groups exist, brutality will too. But Antifa is not one singular entity. Trump's last FBI director called it more of an ideology than an organization. So again, it's not clear how the designation is going to work exactly. And for now, the White House has not put out any more information. Stay tuned. Well, Jerry from Ben & Jerry's has decided to quit his own ice cream company after nearly half a century. Jerry Greenfield says the problem is the brand no longer has the independence to speak up on social issues, specifically that it's being stifled by umbrella parent company Unilever. Ben & Jerry's has actually always been known for activism, along with ice cream. For example, in 2009, Chubby Hubby was renamed to Hubby Hubby in support of gay marriage. And in 2019, the Justice Remixed flavor came out to build awareness about racial justice. But Ben & Jerry's relationship with Unilever has gotten worse in recent years, especially since the ice cream brand decided to stop sales in Israel over the war in Gaza. At this point, its direct parent company, the Magnum Ice Cream Company, responded to Greenfield's departure by saying it's still, quote, focused on carrying forward the legacy of peace, love, and ice cream. As for Greenfield, he says he's going to keep up his social fight from outside the company. You now have a chance to vote on which toys should be inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame. As always, there are plenty of nostalgic nominees this year. One is actually even older than humans. We're talking about snow. Yes, the cold white stuff that falls from the sky could soon become a Toy Hall of Famer. But it has plenty of competition. Other nominees include games like Trivial Pursuit, Connect 4, and Battleship. There's also the Furby, Tickle Me Elmo, a Star Wars lightsaber, and more. Once the public selects their favorites, an advisory committee will make the final decisions about the inductees. Voting is open through next Wednesday. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Thing to Know Thursday. But first, this episode is sponsored by Hiya Health. Back to school season always feels like a reset. New routines, busier mornings, and making sure my kid has what he needs to stay healthy. One thing that makes it easier? My 4-year-old takes his Hiya Children's vitamins and probiotics every single day, and he loves them. And with everyone heading back into classrooms and activities, I like knowing he's getting immune, energy, and brain-supporting nutrients each morning. And Hiya has zero sugar, zero junk. Just 15 essential vitamins and minerals, plus a blend of organic fruits and veggies. And are you tired of battling with your kids to eat their greens? Hiya now has Kids Daily Greens Plus Superfoods, a chocolate-flavored greens powder designed specifically for kids, packed with over 55 whole food ingredients to support brain power, development, and digestion. Just scoop, shake, and sip with milk or any non-dairy beverage for a delicious and nutritious boost your kids will actually enjoy. And we've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy. This deal is not available on their regular website, so go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. Now back to Thing to Know Thursday. Have you ever heard the old saying that 50% of marriages end in divorce? Well, new data shows that's just not true. In fact, divorce rates have been going down since the 1980s. The National Center for Family and Marriage Research at Bowling Green State University says part of the reason is because marriages have also been in steady decline, especially among young adults. People are waiting longer to get married, and those marriages seem to be stronger. Experts explain by saying as people get older, they are more emotionally and financially mature, so that takes away some of the more common stressors on a marriage. All that said, there is one exception to the trend. Even though divorce rates have been going down among most age groups, the rates are going up for older people. In fact, the largest increase of people filing for divorce comes from women 65 and older, giving way to a new term called silver divorce. Thank you so much for listening today and for making us part of your daily routine. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.